There was a hearing this morning. Luigi Mangione, federal courthouse in New York, 11:30 a.m. I've been covering this case since December of 2024, since the morning Brian Thompson got shot outside a Manhattan hotel, and the internet split clean in half over whether the guy who did it was a monster or a folk hero. I watched all of it unfold in real time. The arrest, the manifesto, the fan mail, the psychiatric defense that appeared out of nowhere and then disappeared just as fast. And none of that is what I want to talk about today, because there is a detail in this case that everybody keeps stepping over on their way to the bigger headlines. Something that was written down before any of this happened, before the silencer, before the bullet casings with deny and depose scratched into them, before Brian Thompson ever walked out of that hotel. It was written by a woman named Mary Mangione, Luigi's grandmother, and she wrote it into a legal document that is now going to be one of the most consequential pieces of paper in this entire story. You need to understand who Mary Mangione was before you understand why that document matters. Her family started with nothing. Italian immigrant parents. Baltimore. A neighborhood called Little Italy, where getting by was about as ambitious as most people let themselves dream. But her husband, Nicholas Mangione Sr., was not most people. He started as a bricklayer. Then he became a contractor. Then he started acquiring things. A nursing home. Then another one. A country club. A resort. A radio station. By the time his children were grown, the Mangione name in Maryland meant something real. It meant healthcare facilities, and luxury hospitality, and conservative talk radio, and the kind of charitable giving where buildings end up with your name on them. The family donated more than $1 million to the Greater Baltimore Medical Center. The hospital's high-risk obstetrics unit carries the Mangione name. Every single one of Nicholas and Mary's 37 grandchildren, including Luigi, was born there. Loyola University has a pool named after them. The St. John's Bible on permanent display at the Loyola Notre Dame Library was funded by the Mangiones. St. Jude, Kennedy Krieger, University of Maryland medical centers, Catholic institutions across the state. This was not a family that cut corners on its reputation. Nicholas died in 2008. Mary kept the whole thing going for 15 more years. 10 children, 37 grandchildren, 23 great-grandchildren. She gave until the end. Mary Mangione died in 2023, 12 months before her grandson shot a man twice in the back on a New York sidewalk. When she died, she left behind a trust. Documents obtained by multiple news organizations put the value somewhere between $30 million and $100 million. The lower number is what was formally documented, but people close to the estate say the real figure is considerably higher. Divided among her 10 children and 37 grandchildren, it was life-changing money for anyone who received it, including Luigi. But Mary did something when she wrote that trust. She wrote a clause. I want to slow down here because the specific language is everything. The trust states that any beneficiary who has been, and I'm reading this directly, charged, indicted, convicted of, or pleads guilty to a felony would be disqualified from receiving their inheritance. Not convicted, not found guilty by a jury. Charged, the mere charge. And she gets specific about what kinds of felonies she had in mind. Common law felonies, violent crimes against persons or property, drug-related offenses involving distribution. Murder is a violent crime against a person. The trustees, which include Luigi's own father, Louis Mangione, have been granted what the document calls final authority in implementing these exclusions. Their decisions are described as conclusive, final, and binding on everyone. And then there's the line. The line I had to read twice. Mary Mangione wrote that it is her wish that the benefit of the doubt is not given to the individual. She wrote that into the legal document, not as a suggestion, not as a preference she hoped someone might remember, as her explicit, documented wish that if someone in her family ends up in this situation, the people managing her money should not go looking for reasons to believe in them. Apply the clause. Now think about what it means that she wrote that. Mary had 37 grandchildren. She didn't write that clause with one of them in mind. She wrote it because she understood something, that wealth and education and opportunity and family name don't guarantee the choices a person is going to make. That even the most carefully built family can produce someone who goes somewhere you never imagined. She built a protection into the document against that possibility. And then she died. And 12 months later, the exact possibility she wrote that clause to cover walked into a Manhattan hotel lobby with a suppressed pistol. Because Luigi Mangione did not position himself as what he was. He positioned himself as something else entirely. The manifesto found on him when he was arrested at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, sitting there with a laptop and a fake New Jersey driver's license. That document describes the American healthcare system as a machine built to deny sick people and protect executives who profit, while ordinary Americans die from conditions that could have been treated. It describes Brian Thompson and United Healthcare in the language of a man with a grievance on behalf of the powerless. He wrote about the deadly, greed-fueled health insurance cartel. He called it targeted precise. He positioned his act as something done for people who couldn't fight back. Here's who Luigi Mangione actually was. He attended the Gilman School in Baltimore. Private, all boys, elite. Tuition runs close to $40,000 a year. He graduated valedictorian in 2016. He went to the University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League. He earned 2 degrees there, including a master's in computer science. He worked as a data engineer at a tech company in California. He was staying at a hostel in Hawaii for weeks before the murder, reading, posting online about his thoughts, drifting in the comfortable, unhurried way that requires a financial cushion most people will never have. And he was heir to a family trust that could be worth $100 million. Brian Thompson grew up in Iowa, state school. He joined United Health Group in 2004 and spent 20 years there building a career the slow, unglamorous way, not fast, not connected, just consistent. He became CEO of United Healthcare in 2021. His net worth at the time of his death was approximately $43 million. His annual compensation was around $10 million, including salary and stock. By any measure, he was an extraordinarily wealthy man. The man who planned his murder for months, who traveled to New York specifically to kill him, who waited outside that hotel at 6:30 in the morning. That man stood to inherit more. Brian Thompson had a wife. He had 2 sons. On December 4, 2024, he was walking to the New York Hilton Midtown for his company's annual investor conference. He was wearing a suit. He was carrying a bag. Someone he had never met shot him twice from behind and walked away. He died on the sidewalk. His sons are growing up without a father, and in the months after that morning, people sent the guy who did it letters in prison, put his face on merchandise, posted fan edits with music under them. There are corners of the internet where Luigi Mangione is still treated like he did something righteous. Brian Thompson doesn't come up much in those conversations. He should, because the self-portrait Luigi painted, the man of the people, the avatar of collective rage, the voice of everyone crushed by a system built for the powerful. That portrait does not survive contact with the actual facts of who these 2 men were. Brian Thompson came from Iowa and worked for 20 years. Luigi Mangione came from a $100 million trust and a $40,000 a year private school and decided, deliberately, carefully, with months of planning and a 3D printed gun and a suppressor and fake ID, that Brian Thompson deserved to die. That is not someone who snapped. That's someone who decided. The legal situation right now is genuinely strange, and it's moving fast. On June 17th, at a pretrial hearing in Manhattan, Mangione's lawyers confirmed something they'd been hinting at. His defense was going to include an argument under New York law called extreme emotional disturbance. This is not an insanity defense. It doesn't get you off. What it does, if the jury buys it, is reduce a murder conviction down to first-degree manslaughter. The practical difference is this. Murder can mean life. First-degree manslaughter under New York law carries a maximum of 25 years. That's not freedom, but it's not the rest of your life in a cell either. Judge Gregory Caro, who's overseeing the state case, told the defense they needed to share their psychiatric materials with prosecutors immediately. He was not subtle about it. His exact words, "I'm not going to let you surprise the people on the eve of trial. Get it done." The next day, Mangione's legal team sent the court a 1-line letter. 1 line. They were withdrawing the psychiatric defense. That was his way out. 25 years instead of life. Gone. In one line, on one day, because showing the records was apparently worse than losing the argument. Now, the defense also admitted something at that hearing that I haven't seen get much attention. Some of the doctors they approached refused to cooperate as expert witnesses, not because of the evidence, because of the notoriety of the case. They didn't want their names attached to it. Medical professionals, people who testify in murder cases for a living, who looked at this one and said no. Legal analyst Richard Soinstein said the withdrawal was designed specifically to avoid the court's deadline to turn over the psychiatric evidence. Whatever was in those records, whatever the evaluation found, Mangione's own lawyers decided that keeping it away from prosecutors was worth giving up the only argument that could have cut his potential sentence. That is a strange calculation. I don't know what to make of it except that it tells you something about what's in those documents. Then, 2 days ago, WNBC reported through anonymous sources that Mangione had been in active plea negotiations with federal prosecutors, that a deal had come close, and then it collapsed. His lead attorney, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, hit back hard. She said the reporting was part of a troubling, deliberate pattern by prosecutors and law enforcement to prejudice Luigi and manipulate public opinion ahead of trial. She didn't confirm or deny the substance. The federal trial, which originally included terrorism-related murder charges before a judge dismissed 2 of them, is now set for next year. The state trial begins September 8th. Luigi Mangione is 28 years old. He has 2 separate trials ahead of him. He has surrendered his best shot at a reduced sentence. Plea talks got close and then fell apart. And he is sitting in a state correctional facility in Pennsylvania, reading letters from strangers who think he means something, while his father manages the trust his grandmother built. The trust Luigi is almost certainly locked out of. Mary Mangione spent 50 years building something, starting from an Italian immigrant family in Baltimore with nothing. Nursing homes and country clubs and radio stations and donations to hospitals and universities and Catholic charities across the state. She outlived her husband by 15 years and kept the whole thing going, and then she sat down and wrote a document that said, essentially, this is what this family stands for, and if someone in this family chooses a different path, they don't get to take what we built with them. She did not write that because she suspected anyone specific. She wrote it because she understood people. And then she died. And the clause sat in the document for 12 months. And then it became necessary. The person who now has to enforce it is Luis Mangione, Luigi's father, his mother's trustee. I genuinely don't know how you sit with that. Your mother writes a clause into her estate, an explicit instruction that the benefit of the doubt should not be given, and then the beneficiary it ends up applying to is your own son. You are legally empowered, maybe legally obligated, to implement what she wrote, to look at your kid in a prison cell and apply your dead mother's clause. I don't know what Luis Mangione thinks about any of this. I doubt he's going to tell us. But that clause is sitting there, written in her handwriting, signed and notarized and filed. It is her wish that the benefit of the doubt is not given to the individual. She meant it. September 8th is 71 days away. When that trial starts, all of it is going to be in the same room at the same time. The manifesto, the 3D printed gun, the surveillance footage, the fingerprints on the water bottle, the notebook they found on him with the words, "Whack the CEO" in it. The 5 days he spent running before a McDonald's employee recognized him. And somewhere behind all of it, not in the courtroom, not in the headlines, but running underneath everything like a current, a trust worth somewhere between $30 million and $100 million, built by a woman who donated to hospitals and never cut corners on her family's name, who had 37 grandchildren and thought she was planning for all of them, who wrote one line that nobody expected to need, and needed it anyway. If you're following this trial, subscribe. September 8th is coming, and I'll be here when it does, for this case, for the federal case behind it, and for Brian Thompson's family, who deserve to see this through to whatever end the system provides. Luigi Mangione has pleaded not guilty to all charges in connection with the death of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He is presumed innocent unless formally convicted in a court of law. All information in this video is drawn entirely from publicly available court records, estate documents obtained and reported by media organizations, and coverage from NPR, NBC News, ABC News, CBS News, The Baltimore Banner, and WNBC as of June 29, 2026.